Hello and a warm welcome. You are watching First Up. Now, in another big twist in the Sheena Bora murder case, Indrani Mukerjea asked for divorce from her husband Peter Mukerjea on the day that the CBI charged both of them with murder and conspiracy. India Today's executive editor Gaurav Sawant spoke to senior lawyers KTS Tulsi and Ujjwal Nikam on our evening programming show, The Newsroom.
The charges against Indrani Mukerjea, the main accused in this case, her husband Peter Mukerjea and her ex-husband Sanjeev Khanna, are extremely grave. But will they stand in a court of law? Two of the best legal minds in the country, Ujjwal Nikam, senior public prosecutor, and also KTS Tulsi, former additional solicitor general, senior advocate. They join me on the broadcast. I want to come to you first, sir. Now, on a day that Indrani Mukerjea is charged with murder, attempt to murder, destruction of evidence, forgery and so on, she files for divorce and she also files to change her will. Could there be a link? Could there be any significance of these two developments?
Let me clear first of all that whatever today which she has said in the court, that has absolutely no legal bearing on the facts of the case, firstly. Secondly, that she has said it may be out of frustration because she must have seen that her husband has given certain statement to the investigating agency and therefore she must have taken the stand. But after all, these things are not going to affect or effect any finding of a criminal court, because ultimately the divorce petition as well as the change of will, this comes under the separate act, that is the Hindu Marriage Act,
yes,
as well as the Hindu law. So this will be the civil things, and this cannot be considered, this will have no impact upon the present proceeding in the court.
Okay, Mr. KTS Tulsi, this cannot be seen or should not be seen as some allege an attempt to derail the judicial process or to delay the judicial process, filing for divorce or seeking to change her will.
None at all. This is actually realization that there is a end of the road situation, and I'm sure I entirely agree with Mr. Nikam. This is you see, the motive that has been established or that is alleged is property and love between Sheena and Rahul.
Yes.
So therefore, she wants to readjust, and she now realizes that the trial is going to be a long drawn process, and she is in for a long haul. It's a case which is fairly strong as compared to normal murder cases. This is a case where you have an eyewitness to preparation, the eyewitness to murder, eyewitness to disposal of the body. So therefore, then it is supported by scientific evidence, called at a record and whatnot.
Okay.
So she perhaps is realization has dawned on her that this is a long haul.
Okay. So she is in for a long haul. But if we were to talk about evidence, and since you mentioned evidence, Mr. Nikam, the evidence against Peter Mukerjea, he's also been charged with criminal conspiracy. He's also been charged with murder. But where is the evidence, sir, that would link him to a criminal conspiracy? It's apparently based on one long phone conversation. Wouldn't that just be seen as circumstantial evidence, Mr. Nikam?
Gaurav, let me tell you very frankly, the entire case based on the circumstantial evidence. No doubt the investigating agency have one trump card, that is in the nature of an approver. Approver is in a way, he is an eyewitness to the incident of murder. So far as the criminal conspiracy is concerned, it is very seldom to have a direct evidence on the point of the criminal conspiracy. Normally the prosecution has to prove criminal conspiracy by the various acts and the omissions committed by all the accused in course of the commission of the crime. And therefore, now the main pivotal question is to establish the charge of the criminal conspiracy. Now what has been transpired in the telephonic conversation even before the arrest certainly the prosecution can rely upon the piece of the circumstances.
Okay.
But ultimately the approver evidence, he is a very star witness in this case, and his evidence will be tested only after the cross-examination.
Okay.
Because approver is a self-confessed traitor.
Yes.
So normally law takes a very caution warning. No doubt approver evidence is acceptable in law, but rule of prudence require that it is to be corroborated in material aspect. So
Okay.
it is a tough time for the investigating agency to adduce such corroborative evidence in order to inspire the confidence in the mind of the court, whatever the approver is telling the truth story.
So
Otherwise,
the approver we talk of in this case, for the benefit of our viewers.
Evidence is that sometimes is relied upon.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The approver is Shamvar Rai, the driver who saw.
Approver means one of the accused.
Yes. Who saw this entire thing unfold. He was there when Sheena Bora was reportedly abducted. He was there when she was reportedly killed. He was there when she was stuffed into a suitcase and burnt. So his testimony, even though he's an accused in this case, Mr. Tulsi, would that be of significant value, or could he be seen that because he wants less punishment, he's turned approver, and because he's a part of the conspiracy, he's turned approver, he's suspect himself, sir?
That's all right, you see, but he has now become the eyes and ears of the judge. How does the justice unravel the truth? The investigators were not there and on the spot. There is only a certain natural course. There were only 2 persons or 3 persons. And to be able to get eyewitness account itself is a very big achievement for the investigation, and if it stands the test of cross-examination, then it will become a very valuable piece of evidence. Of course, it will all depend on the other circumstances, and then the statement of the approver can also be added in the balance.
Okay.
And then the judges will decide. It's
Okay.
not that the court is going to begin with the statement of approver. They will perhaps put it in the scales at the end, and if they tilt in a particular
favor of
manner.
the prosecution. Okay, but I want to understand this. You know, the case that the prosecution is building against Indrani Mukerjea, the key conspirator in this case, the main murder accused, that she did not want to see her daughter as her daughter-in-law. Mr. Nikam, is that plausible? Is that motive enough for murder, sir?
Gaurav, frankly speaking, in this case, a motive that investigating agency could not properly place on the record. Let me say very, very candidly, because ultimately in circumstantial evidence, motive assumes an important role in the commission of the crime. No doubt, the investigating agency have one trump card, that is an approver's evidence. But now we have to see how far approver throws light on the point of the motive. Because Peter Mukerjea's role comes as a conspirator.
Okay.
Whereas the Indrani had some definite motive. And what was that motive? Why Indrani wanted to kill her own daughter?
Yes.
That is the most important question.
Yes.
So investigating agency has to point out and to convince the court as to these are the falana reasons for which the conspiracy was hatched. Ultimately the conspiracy is to be hatched for a particular specific object. And that object is the motive behind the crime.
Yes.
And therefore it is very interesting to know now as to how the prosecution is going to establish the motive in this case.
Okay, and that becomes extremely significant for any murder trial to proceed, Mr. KTS Tulsi. Motive for murder, motive that her daughter would have become her daughter-in-law, that her daughter would have inherited all her property, and that is why she didn't want to give her daughter some flat somewhere, and that is why she killed her daughter. She's turned around and said none of this is true. How does material evidence come in this case to prove this charge that she didn't want her daughter to be her daughter-in-law, sir?
You see, the entire history that we have been reading only through the newspapers because I have no access to the charge sheet or the statements of witnesses. What I can say superficially, that Indrani has come up as a person who is extremely attached to property, very ambitious and very attached to property, money. And in this case, if Rahul and Sheena had got married, Peter's property would have gone to the son. And although, you see, she wanted to inherit the property as class 1 heir, and if her own daughter is also married in that family, her share perhaps becomes less. Otherwise, Sheena would not get any part of that property. The other is that she was tooth and nail opposed to the marriage between the two. Marriage between the two, there can be any number of reasons. But I really think that in a case where you have an eyewitness account, even if it is an approver, motive does not assume that much of a significance. And I wouldn't be surprised in the course of the trial if Peter also turns an approver.
Oh, that will be
or becomes a witness.
That
I wouldn't be surprised because the friction between the two has become apparent today.
Yes, especially with Indrani Mukerjea filing for divorce. Now, it's surprising that you say she was very, very attached to property all through this, and look at the turn of events, Mr. Nikam, that now Indrani Mukerjea actually wants to donate 75% of her property or all her material assets to ISKCON temple and 25% to welfare of women in prison. What a transformation. Will this have any impact? Will this have any bearing whatsoever on either the case or the quantum of sentence, if at all?
Gaurav, so far as point of sentence is concerned, it will be too premature to say anything. Because if a person has committed a crime and if he repents by donating, then I don't think that the gravity of the offense reduced down. But certainly, let me tell you very frankly, that these things of intending to file a divorce petition or gifting the entire property for a charity purpose, that absolutely will have no bearing upon the present facts of the case. But still, I think it's the biggest challenge for the investigating agency to prove the motive. Because ultimately the approver is telling only about the incident of murder. Of course, I have no access to the papers and I have not seen any of the statement also. But whatever the news reading clipping says, that Peter was involved for a particular object. What was the Peter's intention? Why he aided and why he conspired with his wife? These questions are required to be solved by the prosecuting agency.
What about Rahul?
If Peter is to be held liable for the murder of Sheena, then the prosecution should come with a strong motive.
And what about Rahul, Mr. Tulsi, Rahul recording conversations with his stepmother Indrani Mukerjea, with his father Peter Mukerjea, those conversations, will that be admissible evidence in a court of law?
Of course they will be, because Rahul himself will be a witness. And you see, there is no doubt. I think you rarely come across a stronger case where the Peter is in the know. It has now been established that he was in the know, and he went along with Sheena in carrying out the murder. And he continued to suppress. He continued to lie to Rahul. Now, all these things will now come up in the course of further evidence and cross-examination. So many questions will be answered which we are not aware of, and I don't want to speculate on this. But I do think that one can't eliminate the possibility of Peter Mukerjea eventually becoming a witness.
We will continue to track developments on this story, but on the day that charges were filed against them. They were charge sheeted. Mr. KTS Tulsi and Mr. Ujjwal Nikam, many thanks for joining us here on India Today. We will continue to track developments on this story.